Welcome to the View Magazine's Rebel Justice podcast. This week we're delighted to speak with Lisa Azarmi, the founder of Ravenous Butterflies, the social media phenomenon with over 1 million followers who've found comfort and solace in her Ravenous Butterflies concept. Lisa takes art, both well-known and unknown, and puts words that she finds with paintings that mean something to her. Through this journey into words and pictures, she leads us like a shaman through emotions and moods in her new book, An Apothecary of Art, which was published recently by Batsford Press and presented last week at the Bloomsbury Festival in October 2023. Lisa shared with us her own journey through pain and hardship. She discusses her painful relationship and her husband, her divorce, raising 3 children, her experience with grief, and how art has guided her through her life's challenges. Lisa uses repeated mantras in her work. You have to love yourself because absolutely no one can love you the same way you love yourself, and it's not going to be any better than it is today. Her repetition is used to appeal to the reader's emotions and focus on the importance of being present in the moment, no matter the challenging life circumstances that we might be facing. Today we're talking to Lisa, who is the creator of the Ravenous Butterflies Instagram and Facebook accounts. Tell us about you and your own background, Lisa.
Well, I graduated in art in 1988 at Goldsmiths with the whole of that cohort from including Damien Hirst and people. I was doing construction textiles. I was born in Sri Lanka, then it was Ceylon, back in the mid-60s. My dad was working in tea and I lived there for 5 years, then moved to Malawi for a few months on the way back to England. Never been to England before, never seen television, couldn't read till I was 10. I was very much sort of, I had a Ceylonese nanny who I was with the whole time. So when I left her when I was 5, I really felt massively bereft because I loved her. She was like my mum. She kind of like slept in the same room with me. I hardly ever saw my parents. And although my dad had a good job, I mean, he didn't earn any money. We just lived like that lifestyle because at that time, that's the way it was, you know. And we came back to England with very little money. I can just remember it was freezing cold. I'd never seen snow before. I'd never seen television. I was just an Indian Ocean, kind of barefoot Indian Ocean girl, really. And then suddenly I'm thrust into this really grey, miserable, freezing cold. And everything smelled of kind of cold apples. I can really remember that. Just driving from the airport, you know, just all these tiny houses, and it was just, there was no colour. It didn't, you know, that smell of the tropics, which is so intense. And I suppose that's really always stayed with me. Went to school, couldn't read until I was 10, like I said, and then sort of discovered reading. But I really threw myself into art from a very young age. It was my way, I suppose, of trying to understand the world. So I'd always be drawing or, you know, looking at picture books. So maybe that's why people thought I could read, because I always kind of had my head in books, but I was always just looking at the pictures. And yeah, I just, you know, that's how it started. My brother came when I was 3 years old. We got on really well. We still do. But it was a very strange, unusual upbringing, really. And I felt very detached from everybody when I came to England, and I always kind of took refuge in sort of music and art and you know, playing in the garden and things like that. I was kind of quite airy fairy. I wasn't very much of a realist, and yeah, that's kind of how it started, I suppose.
There is so much in that I can personally relate to, because I was born in Uganda and brought here as a young child. And I just remember standing at the top of the flight of stairs when you descend the airplane and just thinking,
Yeah,
where's all the colour gone? You know, you just look around and it's
Really.
like, oh, the colour has been sucked out of, even the
Yeah.
people didn't have any colour.
Yeah.
It was such a
Yeah.
strange.
And you know, I was used to having everybody around me was brown and delicious and smelled coconut and was very touchy feely and lovely, you know, and I'm suddenly with these cold, isolated people that kept to themselves and nobody touched you. And I think my mother and I never really bonded because of that. You know, she didn't really know who I was, you know, never did. And yeah, I think it was very unusual, isn't it, coming to this country after having been brought up in that kind of an environment.
Yes, I can definitely relate to that.
And the food, I mean, everything, the spices, the smells, you know, everything was just so lush. And I suppose I've always been kind of craving for that, really, you know, since then.
Yeah, and I think when you grow up in the Southern Hemisphere, your senses are so completely kind of more in touch with your surroundings. The color is so vibrant, the smell, you can smell the
Yeah.
rain, you can
Yeah.
smell the hibiscus, you can
Yeah.
smell after the rain. And
Yeah.
here, like you said, that smell of cold apples, that's so fantastic. That's such a great way to put it.
Well, we're going from kind of rotting mangoes to cold apples. I mean, that was the difference,
Yes, give me rotting mangoes any day, really. Love the smell. So then you came to England and met an Iranian man and had 3 children. Can you tell us a little bit about that and how Ravenous Butterfly started?
Well, I met him when I was 17, when I was at college doing A-levels. We were both kind of from exotic places, I suppose. He had arrived in England at 13 from the revolution in Iran, and he was in political exile with his family. They'd lost everything. They'd lost, a lot of family members and friends, and it was just horrendous. And I kind of probably thought I could fix him. And he did quantum physics. I was doing fine art. We're very different, in our types of personality. And I never really could fix him. But, at the time, I just had very, very low self-esteem. I was always very overweight. My parents, my mother in particular, was this kind of supermodel woman who just relied on her leggy looks and gorgeousness. And I was always just not what she expected she was going to have as a daughter, I think. She's got her 6'4" son who's like that, but not me. And so I think it was just weird. So I never really thought I was good enough, I suppose, to take it any further than be with that person. And at that time it felt right, but obviously we were very incompatible. We did have 3 children, thankfully, because they are just brilliant and just really interesting children, sort of mixed culture children, and gorgeous. And they are both my sons are very creative. They're both studying fine art. My eldest son's doing drawing. My middle child, he's doing fine art. And then there's my daughter who is doing world philosophy. So they're all quite interesting characters, and they all kind of very much think outside the box because they spent a lot of their time with me. And I've always had a house full of crazy mad people that are interesting and diverse, and I suppose they think that's kind of normal, which is good. So yeah, they're interesting. My marriage broke up, and I just decided, well, I actually thought it was my children that was the problem. I thought that they'd kind of sucked the life out of me, but actually my relationship was the problem. It wasn't my children at all. So I started having psychoanalytic psychotherapy in the early 2000s, 2010, something like that. And I had that actually for 10 years. And during that period, I realized that actually it wasn't my children at all. It was my relationship with my husband that was wrong. He was never around, and I was kind of invisible. And my weight had doubled in size. And when I say doubled in size, I mean I was like 34 stone or something. So I had gastric bypass surgery in 2010. So this is 2000. So this is going back a bit. But then moving forwards, I thought that was going to fix everything, but it didn't. Not with our relationship. So I decided that was it. So we ended up separating in 2013. And during that period, that's when I started Ravenous Butterflies. And that's when I did it for myself as a form of therapy. I did it completely for myself. I was a real technophobe. My ex-husband was, he was, binary boy that worked for, merchant private banking, writing all their coding for all their systems, and always told me I was rubbish. He was very, very coercive, always put me down. And so I thought, oh, I can't do computers, I can't do tech, I can't do this, I can't do that. But what I could do was I could connect with people. And I think that I had no idea that something like Facebook, which is where I started, was going to connect with the rest of the world the way it has. And I had no idea that there are a lot of people out there who resonated with the way that I was feeling at any particular time when I did a post. And I had no idea that it would take off the way that it has. So I had no aspirations of it becoming, 1 million followers or whatever it is now at all. I just thought I was happy when it was 100, I mean, I just thought it was great. Other people kind of, were getting something from this poem or this piece of artwork or whatever it was, that I was posting. And they were in Timbuktu and New York and, Honolulu or wherever, wherever Seoul or wherever they were. It was just like magic, And yeah, that's how it started. And he was constantly saying, why are you wasting your time? Why are you doing this? Why are you doing that? And I just thought, you know what? Just leave me alone. And I just don't want to be with you anymore. And I think very difficult for women like me who probably, I'm in my mid to late 50s, and I'd raised the family. We went to New York. I was basically there as the kind of dutiful wife who was doing everything at home. And obviously, doing part-time stuff, doing my art and writing and things as well. But I had no income, so to speak of, so I felt very trapped. And as soon as I wanted to separate or get divorced, my ex-husband just cut up all the credit cards, cut up all the lines of, finance. Even didn't give me any money for food. He'd go off and go to the supermarket and buy ridiculous stuff, and whereas I'd been the one doing everything, and it was just, and he refused to move out of the house, and it was just a very, very difficult time. I had to go on child tax credits, which I found very demeaning, and it was because he was away abroad a lot, so I couldn't go and get a job because there was nobody at home for the kids. It was just a horrible, horrible, horrible time, and I kind of thought I was just going to break under that, really emotionally, just completely break, but I didn't.
No, you didn't. Good for us that you didn't, really. What you're describing is classic coercive control, the
Yeah,
cutting off the finances, the bullying, the good at this, the gaslighting about your own hobbies and where you're
yeah,
getting your sense of self-worth. Those are the pure traits of someone who is a pretty nasty coercive controller, really. Did you recognize that at the time, what was happening, or were you
no,
more kind of
no,
to think, oh, well, he must be right, because that's what most women in that position would think, well, I must be rubbish at this, or I must
yeah,
be bad.
yeah, I thought it was all my fault. I thought it was, and I still take full responsibility. I still don't think that. I still think it takes two to tango in a relationship. If the chemistry is not right, or if the pairing of the two people isn't right. And we met when we were very young, and he was very emotionally challenged when I met him after having lost his everything that he knew, really, and kind of emotionally stunted. I didn't recognize it at the time at all, because we didn't really talk about things like that then. And my mother certainly never did. My mother always carried this resentment. She divorced my dad when she was in her early 40s, after 20 something years of marriage, and constantly blamed him. And I just said, Mum, you've got to take responsibility, which, you have to take responsibility for a breakdown of a relationship, don't you? You can't just 100% blame another person. And I think the only thing I regret is that I didn't leave my ex-husband when my daughter was born. And I wouldn't say he was a terrible person. I mean, he has got some lovely qualities as well, because he's not all bad. Otherwise, I wouldn't have gone there in the first place. But as we grew, we grew in very different ways, and he did become a lot more controlling and a lot more coercive, and I didn't. I was kind of blossoming, and I lost all of that weight, and because I was like this kind of ravenous butterfly. I wanted to get out there and do stuff, and it was very difficult with somebody who was constantly constraining and kind of just telling me that I was rubbish at everything the whole time. And that's just in his makeup, that is the way he is. The wrong kind of person for me. I wish I'd known about those things, about gaslighting and coercive control, back in the 2005 or 7 or whatever it was. But nobody really talked about it. Otherwise, I think I would have got the courage together. And I also didn't share my situation either with many people. So it came as a big shock when I decided to leave Amir, and I got blamed by, some of my friends thought I was being mad, but they had no idea what it was like. And that's why I try not to judge people when they're going through situations like that, because I just think you don't know what's going on behind closed doors. You don't know what this person is really like. So I just thought, actually, let's try and get some marriage guidance counselling. That didn't work, because he never spoke about anything in the counselling sessions that we had, and then just shouted at me when we left. And it was just typical. And the minute I got divorced, which actually was in lockdown, but I moved in the January from the family home. We sold it, and I moved into a rental house with my children. Got my own front door key for the first time. Was just I felt like I was on holiday. I mean, I could not believe my luck. Took almost 10 years to get divorced, from when I wanted a divorce in 2010 and told him, for sure, in 2013. And he just dragged it through the courts and barristers, and it was so unnecessary, because I ended up getting more than I'd asked for in the first place, and so unreasonable. And I was so relieved. Best thing I ever did. Best thing I ever did was have the children, but also best thing I ever did was get divorced. you know.
So interesting how you talk about how he dragged you through the justice system. The family courts are notorious for men who are abusers to drag former partners
Oh,
through,
and the
just
judge, yeah.
prolong the pain. And judges
Oh,
don't understand, and barristers don't understand, and solicitors. It's just a day's work. They don't understand the trauma and actually the
well,
violence that you go through by having to relive all of that again.
Well, I mean, I had a situation where we lived very close to Wimbledon tennis courts, and I used to rent out the flat, which was at the top of our house, for income. And he just used to come, he went to Helsinki, then he moved back, then he was working in Dublin, then he'd come back at weekends, so I couldn't actually earn anything. He wasn't obviously giving me any money. He wasn't even giving me any money to buy light bulbs or anything like that for the house. And, I had to maintain everything, do everything myself. And it was just a nightmare. But my lawyer was amazing, actually. She was brilliant. So was my barrister. And the judges, we went to court twice, and the judges just sat there and said to him, "Look, Mr. Azarmi, you just got to sort this out. This is just a waste of everybody's time and money. What are you doing?" And really, in the end, the people it affected the most were the children. It was just ridiculous, and I think that it should not be allowed. And I think they've changed the law now, haven't they, to make so that women. He wouldn't admit to the fact that we'd been separated for 3 years. So I had to wait, all this other more time to, but now I think you can get divorced by, very much more quickly.
These no fault divorces, I think, yeah,
Yeah.
which are much easier on women. Yeah.
Yeah. That was just terrible.
I'm so sorry you had such a horrible time. It just sounds so incredibly painful and traumatic. But
Thank
is
you.
that where because I was going to ask you, where did ravenous butterflies come from? Because it's just such a beautiful kind of an evocative. You don't think of butterflies being ravenous, but actually they are, aren't they?
Well, they are. I mean, especially when you see all those monarch butterflies flying down from the States down to Mexico in these kind of massive, they're called rabbles of butterflies, like a whole flock of butterflies is a rabble, which I love. A mad rabble of butterflies. And I just think that it was absolutely the way I was feeling. I felt that this is my time. I'm a woman who's older. Who cares? I mean, I'm feeling better now than I felt ever in my life. I feel wiser and more in control. I totally know myself. I totally know what I want. I went through so much crap, but actually, it's been the making of me. And I don't think I could have had as much impact with Ravenous with the people that I've impacted throughout the world had I not had been able to be empathic and have that understanding of what other people have been through too. So I really do think that my divorce was probably the making of me and all that hardship and pain. I think that I was in a wheelchair and on crutches for almost 3 years because I couldn't walk. I died after that operation in New York, and I was in intensive care for a week after I had that gastric bypass surgery. All of these things, having my son who's autistic, massively on the autistic spectrum with ADHD, Asperger's, OCD, anxiety, all of these things. Both of my sons are gay. I think all of this stuff. I just think my mum died at the end of last year. My dog had to be put down just before Christmas. And I just think actually you get bombarded with things. But I'm always somebody whose cup is always almost full. And I think that you have to switch negativity into positivity. Otherwise, you're just going to be dragged down and you're not going to survive it. And I look at myself and I just think there's so much out there. There's so much to give. There's so much that people are craving for. There's so much loneliness. There's so much destitution. There's so much poverty. There's so much sadness and misery and illness and horrible, horrible injustices in this world. People need respite from that, I love the fact that I can give that through something so simple and so nourishing. So it's kind of been the making of me, really.
So you've personally used art as a form of creative therapy, and you said it started
Yeah.
while you were in psychoanalytical process. How did it come about? How did the idea come about? I'm really fascinated to know a bit more about how because the couplings are so fantastic, like the pictures and then the writing. They're just always so perfect and so beautiful. So how did that kind of come together for you?
I don't know. I think, to be honest, I mean, I've always gone to art and words, theatre, literature, songs, whatever it is, throughout my life for respite and for inspiration, and it's my kind of like my safe place. So I had this kind of quite big knowledge of things, and I think growing up in the tropics, I'm always drawn to these sort of colours and richness and sounds and senses, and I'm a very kind of sensual person, I suppose. So for me, if I see a painting or a beautiful image when I'm sort of looking, researching stuff for posting, I suddenly think, oh, that would go beautifully with that bit of poetry, or do you remember that bit from The Great Gatsby? That'd be amazing with that, when he said that. And I just have been doing it now for 10 years, so I think I've learnt more doing this throughout the whole of the education of the whole of my life. It's worth more than any university degree. It's like 10 university degrees rolled into one because I'm like this sponge and I'm kind of constantly absorbing it all. So it's almost like I see the image and I can almost see the words and feel the words, and they become part of the image. So for me, it's a sort of natural marriage. Sometimes, when I made my book, I open the page sometimes now, and sometimes I get really tearful because I think, God, that is just so simple and so beautiful, and it's just so meaningful, and all it is a few words and a painting. It's nothing. But it's alchemy. I mean, it is magic. I don't know how it happens. I look at other people's stuff that they post, and I very rarely get moved in the same way. So there must be something going on, but it just seems to me it's sort of natural, and it's a way of expressing my inner feelings, I suppose. It's very authentic to who I am. It's most of the stuff I post is how I feel on that at that moment or on that day, and I do schedule stuff a couple of weeks in advance, but then I'll move things around if I feel differently on the day. If something really hits me, or if I see something or I feel something, I just think, no, let's move that to the end of the month and then review it then. It's like, let's put this down because this is how I'm really feeling, and it works. It's just a natural thing for me.
But you must have such an incredibly huge cultural archive internally. So as you said, you were reading and loads and just absorbing lots and lots of stuff as a child. So this has come out later on to be projected into this beautiful project.
Yeah.
What's about some feedback that you get from some of your followers? It must be very gratifying.
Oh gosh, I mean, I do something on my website. I do this thing called Thought for the Week, and I used to just find a quote and do a post like I did a painting like I do online, but I decided to change that, and I actually write a personal piece and then I'll put a painting. So it will be something like, for instance, I wrote a piece today that's going out which is about gardening, and I suppose the idea that what you reap, what you sow, and just take it step by step, and you'll get there in the end. And from little acorns, great oak trees grow, kind of thing. It's that. So it's kind of inspirational stuff. That's what I do, really.
And you're up for this Health and Wellbeing Award now as well.
Well, yes. Surprisingly, I was shortlisted for that. I haven't heard about that yet, but I was shortlisted for it, which I thought was quite interesting. And I think people. I mean, you asked me about what people get from what I post. I get emails from people saying. I mean, one woman sent me a picture of her with her son, who it was when he was a baby, but it was almost literally a replica of a painting that I posted with a quote, and he had died that year when he was 32. And she sort of said to me, every time I see it, and she sent the picture of them together lying down on the grass, and it was exactly the same as the painting that I had posted. And I think people get very deeply moved by, I get messages, I get emails, I get threads. If you read some of the threads on the posts, the people are very open and they're very personal about their experiences, and they share a lot. And people have been very loyal as well and have been followers for a very long time, and they've made friends there, and they've supported each other, and through the pandemic and through bereavement or loss or love or whatever it is, marriage, birth, whatever, they're all there for each other, apart from the trolls that are pretty slimy and horrible. I have to get rid of. I have to kind of police the site for bots and nasty
Why would
people.
someone troll your page? What on earth could they possibly?
Those lovely people, because they see, I think, the beauty and all the lovely comments and everything. They're just trying to scam people, and I mean, we get rid of them. I've got Marianne who helps me, and we're pretty ruthless. We ban people quite a lot, and I'm just surprised that Facebook and Instagram don't, they can't recognise that, because it's so obvious. You've got people writing the same comment on everybody's thing, and it's just it's always these photographs of men with the American flag and their ex-army or whatever. It's like, yeah, really, okay. But they're all bots, I'm sure. They're just fakers that are trying to make it and they're never going to. So we get rid of them.
Just get rid of them. Block, delete. I wish there was a block button in real life as well.
Exactly.
I wanted to find out a bit about how we can incorporate creativity into our own daily lives. Obviously, it's given you back so much. And as far as what we do at The View, so we create art with women in the justice system and then make merchandise that then is sold on at pop-ups and art fairs and all sorts of different places. Then it's half the proceeds go back to the women, and it's never going to make anyone a multimillionaire, but it does help with a little bit of financial inclusion. And it also helps to redefine, I think, our own perceptions of who we are. So I started painting while I was incarcerated, and it was the only thing that gave me any respite from that absolutely horrible place, because I mean everything is grey and everything is grim and everything is just designed to be oppressive and horrible. And actually there's so much freedom in just like a little palette of paints, and if they'll let you have it, and paper, and you can create your own exit from this horrible place that you've been put into for whatever reason. So for me, that was one of the big reasons for wanting to start the View, was I really learned to express myself through my art and redefine who I am and what I am, and not just kind of the baggage or the great big whatever history. Or so for me, I know it makes a huge difference in incorporating or trying to incorporate something creative every day. And when I make myself do it, it sounds terrible, but sometimes I have to make myself do it to feel better, which is so counterintuitive, because you would think that I would do it because I know that I'm going to feel better. But I still have to kind of sometimes make myself do it to remind myself that, oh, when I do this, I feel better. But do you have any ideas for how we might be able to incorporate this creativity? And also tell us a little bit about your own art practice as well. That sounds really interesting.
Well, I kind of relate completely to what you're saying about, needing that nudge to make yourself feel better from doing it, because there's always that space in between, isn't there, between knowing what you need to do or want to do and actually doing it. And it's having that courage to take that leap. And I think my biggest advice to anybody would be, do not judge yourself. Don't try and sort of validate what you're doing. Just do it. Just have the courage to do it. Just take out. I mean, I used to teach art and design after I graduated from Goldsmiths. I used to teach A-level and B-Tech and stuff back in ages ago. And the first thing I used to get my students to do was just to close their eyes and get a bit of charcoal, and you have the paper in front of them. Close your eyes and just draw what you're thinking. And they'd be so like, what's she getting us to do that for? But just broke down those barriers, and it was so much fun. Everybody had a laugh, and we're just like, oh my God, what's that? But it broke down the barriers, and it made people sort of more courageous about not having to be perfect at everything. So I would say to anybody, I started with my friend Youth, who's a music producer, Martin Glover, and he wanted to rekindle the London arts labs, like they had in the 60s with Ginsberg and everybody. So we started doing that just before lockdown, a couple of years before lockdown. And during lockdown, we had some online festivals where we had talks during the day, which I hosted with him, and lots of different interesting sort of thinkers and poets and artists and writers. And then from about 6 o'clock till about 4 a.m, there were DJs and people. It was like kitchen disco. And they were really, really popular. Every week we used to have an online, in fact we still do, an online arts lab, South London Arts Lab meet up on a Zoom thing every Monday evening, where there'd be a subject. It could be something like, handcuffs, or it could be, anything, tomatoes, whatever. And that would be the subject, and everybody would do their take on it. So whether it be a piece of art, some digital work, whatever it was, knitting or whatever it was. And then they sort of show it on the sort of online gallery at the end of the week. And it was that was really fun. So I would say to anybody, and for me, when I was at my worst and I was really miserable and I felt very shut down in my relationship, in my marriage, I didn't make any art. I didn't paint. I didn't draw. I didn't do anything. I wrote a lot of poetry, because I found that was a really easy way for me to just get out my feelings just on paper in sort of notebooks. But I did start in 2015 when things were looking up a bit. I went back to evening classes and did oil painting and did a sculpture from the body, naked body, and things like that. And that really got me back into the sort of whole kind of like, it was just an amazing routine to be back into, and kind of freeing your mind and letting go and not actually worrying at all about what people think. You're doing it for yourself. And the more you just let go, that essence of you comes out, doesn't it? So, you can make something and it might not look like the dog or whatever it was supposed to be, but people, but it will just be something great because it's got part of you in it. It's got a bit of your soul in it and a bit of you in it. And it's a legacy that you leave behind. And I much prefer to give people presents like that than going to some expensive shop and buying a scented candle or something. It's like, I'd far rather something from the heart,
So you have this beautiful book out, Ravenous Butterflies, which is number 1 and number 2 in the US, England, and across Europe, which is an amazing achievement. How does that feel?
It's fantastic because it's scary, actually. It was a really scary process because I got to a point where my kind of followers were saying, "Come on, Lisa, why don't you just? We want a book." And I was like, "Oh, that's okay. Well, all right, then off you go. You do it then." And because I because I'd been sort of behind my screen all this time, I just thought, "Oh, all right, and I suppose I should do a book." And I thought, first of all, I was going to do it myself, and I'd just self-publish. And I'm so glad I didn't. I was at a dinner party, I don't know, about 2017, and I met somebody who was an agent and in the publishing world, and he gave me his card and said, "If you ever want to do a book, just let me know." And I was like, "Yeah, whatever." That was then. Then it was lockdown, and everyone was saying, "Do a book, do a book." So I thought, okay, I better do a book. So I thought, right, let's do it on my own. And I thought, no, I'm going to get Piers involved, and he can sort it out for me. So I had all of the masses and masses of files that I put together, and images and quotes and everything else. And then we got a publishing deal with this lovely publisher called Batsford in Bloomsbury, who are a lovely kind of old-fashioned publisher of sort of art books and guidebooks and maps and colouring books and all sorts of things. Really lovely. And they've just been amazing as a team. And we've just produced this, An Apothecary of Art to Soothe Your Soul, which is a lovely book. Have you seen it yet?
Yes, it's beautiful. It's beautifully laid out. It's like a prize. It's beautiful. It's a gift. I mean, it's an incredible. You get lots of these books come through and stuff, but it's extraordinarily well laid out and thoughtful, I thought.
Yeah, thank you. It's designed by my ex-boyfriend's daughter, actually, Amelia Cosley, who is an amazing woman and really talented. And she kind of gets me, and we did it together. It's very kind of authentic, exactly how I wanted it to look and feel and be. And it's just full of just these beautiful images and quotes. And I think what I did, when my publisher, we were working together, they said, "Do you want to have an index at the front?" And I was like, "No, I want it to be like an emotional journey that you go through, because that's what life is like, isn't it? It's not prescriptive." So I sort of devised this thing called the Journey Finder at the beginning, where you can go and you can think, "Oh, look, you could go there for love or for bereavement or for joy or for friendship." And you can go through the book and you can find the paintings and the quotes that relate to that. And it's just a lovely meandering sort of journey through emotions, really. And then at the back, there's a little tiny bit, a little bio on each of the artists, telling you a little bit more about them if you want to know. But it's not meant to be an academic book. It's meant to be a well-being, sort of touchy-feely, beautiful book that is going to help people through their day, through life, and makes the most amazing gift, actually, for anything. It's lovely. I'm even though I say so myself, I am very proud of it.
You should be. It's beautiful, and I love how you've divided it up into these. Is it 24 separate journeys that people can go on? So you can sort of pick a mood, and you can dip in and dip out, and it's beautiful. It's beautifully done.
I tried to steer away from kind of big blockbuster artists and things, so there's a lot of stuff in there which people haven't seen. I'm kind of very drawn to the northern kind of Scandinavian Skagen painters and painters that bring this immense quality of light and sort of kind of effervescence and sort of iridescence to their work. And because I think that's really beautiful, when you're looking at something, you can kind of immerse yourself in it. It's not sort of too miserable. It's kind of uplifting. So I've tried to keep it on that kind of level, really. Yeah.
What are your hopes for the book? So it's been hugely successful, and you've described how you've created these journeys, but what are your hopes? What do you want it to bring people, do you think?
I'd like it to bring people into a place of peace and calm, and to help them to get through whatever struggles they're going through in their day, in the lives that they're living. I mean, you talked about incarceration, and I think if you were allowed to have a book like that with you, it would hopefully give you a little glimmer of hope that would bring something positive into your day, into your space. And I think that I want it to be available kind of in bookshops where people can go in and look at it and hold it and buy it. I mean, I've found that a lot of people that have bought it for themselves have ended up buying, 4 or 5 or 6 copies, to give as gifts and things. So there's a lot of love in there, and there's a lot of care. And I suppose I kind of want people to wrap themselves up in that, and to find little remedies to help them through their lives, really, because it's pretty crap out there. And I think that if I hadn't been such a resilient person and so sort of positive and clung on to the goodness in people and things, I would have gone under. And it would have been nice if I'd had something like this, given to me, that I could. It would have made me feel an awful lot better about things. So yeah, that's kind of what I hope, really.
Well, that feels so right, because it is sort of a sanctuary. It's like a refuge, and in all this
Yeah,
horrible news and all this horrible, every time you turn on the
yeah,
TV, it's war and famine and disaster and asylum
yeah.
and immigrants and all this horror that's just kind of being thrown at us all the time. There's nowhere to go with it. I've stopped watching the news. I can't bear it anymore. I literally
It's
don't know what's
awful.
going on in the world because I can't bear it. It's just too much. So when you
It's
see
just
something like
awful.
your book, it literally is like it's like an emotional refuge and a sanctuary to just
Yeah,
park yourself, even for a little while, and then
yeah,
be able to face whatever else is, fresh hell is coming at you that day. It's
yeah.
such a tribute to your own journey, and I think your own process to be able to bring people with you as well. Can you tell us about your future projects? Are you doing anything exciting? What's next for you?
Well, the very next thing I'm doing, which is very exciting, is I've made this sort of luxury special edition book, which is beautiful actually. It's in this lovely kind of presentation
Oh,
linen
lovely.
thing. In here there is a print which I painted. It's one of the paintings I painted specially for it actually. And then I had a lovely giclée print done of it. Can you see that?
Oh, that's gorgeous. I love it. It's sort of flowers.
Spring flowers. I painted it in the spring, and actually the print worked out really well. So I've limited that to, I've done 250 copies, and that's going to be going out the week of the sort of 21st, 24th of October. I've got actually there's 100 to be sold in the US and 100 here, and I'm holding back the rest because I've already pre-sold some. So it's very limited and it's kind of quite special, really. And if people want to give something as a really special gift or keep it as a collector's item, then they can do that. And I'm also working on a couple more books at the moment. In fact, I started the third book, started the fourth book, so I've done the first one. So I've just been working on three other books, all in the same format, all going to be very beautiful, and they're going to take you through other journeys through the art world and literature. Can't really say too much, but they're just going to be even more beautiful, and hopefully going to offer more kind of respite from all the rubbish out there. So you can make a little set. You can have a little set of books. I think it's going to hopefully be an ongoing thing that we're going to release them each year. And other things are in the pipeline too. So other partnerships and things. So it's really exciting.
It's so fantastic that out of all of that pain and trauma and difficult processes, you've carved a place for yourself, which is truly yours. I mean, no one else is really doing it in the same way. But I think it's such a testament to your own, as you said, resilience. So many people would have folded. And then, of course, all of that horror of lockdown and everything, so many people did have horrible, horrible times, but you took it and you made something really, very personal and very special out of it. And you've shared it with us, which is, it's a huge gift. And I just wanted to say the book is so well priced. I mean, usually these kind of coffee
I
table
know.
books are, 80 or £100, whereas yours is so well priced, and it's
Yes.
it's, it's very good value.
Yeah, it's way too good value. I think it should be more than that. No, it shouldn't. It's fine. What's really lovely about it is that it's a price point that everybody can really, most people can afford. So it's good.
Yes, and it makes it much, much more accessible. I mean, I
Yes,
would love to see it in all of the women's prisons libraries, because
yes,
it would just be so well received there. And
yeah,
we're actually doing the Radical Book Fair in a few weeks, so maybe we should get some copies for that.
yeah.
But
It'll be amazing.
I wanted to finish by asking you to share something for the women who are going through a rough time, the sort of time that you went through, where they might be in a bad relationship, where they might be trying to get out of something, where they feel trapped. Have you got something that you'd like to share, or something that you'd like to say as words of courage, maybe?
Yeah, I mean, I went through my book before we spoke, and I'm going to read a quote from it, and I think it's really appropriate. It's something that it's a quote I've always gone to when I've been feeling dark. So I'll just read it. It's by Aldous Huxley from The Island. It's dark because you're trying too hard. Lightly, child, lightly. Learn to do everything lightly. Yes, feel lightly even though you're feeling deeply. Just lightly let things happen and lightly cope with them. I was so preposterously serious in those days. Lightly, lightly. It's the best advice ever given me, to throw away your baggage and go forward. There are quicksands all about you, sucking at your feet, trying to suck you down into fear and self-pity and despair. That's why you must walk so lightly, my darling. And I think it's just important to kind of keep your head in the light and not to be sucked down into all that darkness. And I would say stay strong, because things do improve, and if you can just hold on to the tiniest thread of hope, you'll tug yourself out of whatever hole you're in, and focus if you can every day on something beautiful. If you're not incarcerated, go out for a walk or something, or go to a gallery or do something beautiful. Look at my book, listen to some lovely music. I think just always try to don't watch the news. And I think always just try to find something inspiring really around you, and immerse yourself in that. And just even for 5 minutes of quiet and peace, I think that's my advice, is just to try to not get dragged down by the struggle, because it is very, very difficult. And I do empathise completely.
And there is so much beauty around, isn't there? It's this finding it, it's looking for it, it's seeking it out, and it's acknowledging those moments. People talk about being triggered and being overwhelmed, and I absolutely understand that. But I think we also need to find these moments of joy for ourselves as well. We need to find things that spark joy, whether it's a color lipstick or it's for me it's always new paint. Whatever it is, you've got to find
bake a cake, or plant some bulbs and then watch them come up in the spring. Whatever it is, it's like there is a lot of positive stuff that you can be doing out there to help you. Go and help other people if you've got some time. Go and volunteer or do something. I mean, that always makes you feel a lot better, and gives perspective on your own problems, doesn't it? So I think it's really important just to tread lightly, to stay light, and to keep your head in the light, and don't be dragged down by the quagmire of things that can happen in life.
Thank you so much. That is such beautiful, amazing, and appropriate advice as well. Thank you very much for your time. Really, really appreciate it. It's been such a joy to speak to you. I just feel like I've understood so much about your process and where you came from and how you got to where you are. And it's really, really inspiring and courageous. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Farah. It's been a real pleasure. Thank you very much.
Thank you for listening to this episode of the Rebel Justice podcast. You can read more about Lisa and her incredible journey in our current edition of The View, available for pre-order on our website. Check out our social media posts with Lisa's evocative juxtapositions of art and words. And if you're attending the Radical Book Fair on the 4th of November at Goldsmiths Campus in Peckham, you'll have the chance to purchase a special signed edition of Lisa's gorgeous book, Ravenous Butterflies. Support The View by liking us on social media, subscribing to our quarterly digital magazine, and donating, sharing, and liking wherever you can. Thank you.